Welcome back to the Stay Hype podcast, where I help you heighten your personal experience through my own experience on this earth. I'm your host, Kristen, and we are back with another episode from my second series, No More Suffering in Silence, where I take you on a journey on healing my sexual trauma. So first and foremost, guys, I definitely wanted to say thank you for all the love and support on last week, 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks episode. It was very challenging for me to make that episode, and it wasn't until I started talking about it that my heart started racing and, the fear of judgment and everything started coming in. But your support and the way that you related and the stories that you shared with me really made me feel less alone, and I just can't thank you enough. So speaking your truth is so powerful, and it's been so healing for me. So that being said, just like Kristen fashion, let's just jump right into it. I don't like wasting a lot of time in the beginning. Let's just get it out. So I wanted to make this episode because I realize how much more in touch I am with my sensuality, my sexuality. And that was not always the case. I was very disconnected from my sexuality for a very long time. And because of the sexual trauma that happened to me in childhood, I just shut that part down. It was just completely separate from me. And I was the quirky girl. That was my MO. I have always been a class clown. I'm a comedian. Everyone knows, all my friends know I'm the one that's making people laugh. And that was the way that I dealt with a lot of my trauma, is through comedy. I made jokes about my abuser some of the times and some of the things that he would do. And I guess a part of me was trying to see, are they going to say something, or is this normal? And because a lot of people, no one really said anything about it or asked deeper, I was like, okay, maybe this is just normal, I guess. But the comedy is how I coped with life in general. The sadness, the attention that I didn't get from my parents, I got when I was funny. And so that mask followed me for my entire life. And now it's a big part of my personality that I love. But for a long time, it was just a mask that I would wear to cover up any insecurities or sadness or anger or whatever it is. But yeah, the quirky class clown was my persona. That was what people really knew me by. And it always bothered me that I didn't get really looked at as being sexy, or if I guess I did, maybe people didn't really tell me that until like later, or we were in a relationship or something. But I just didn't feel really connected. I felt very ashamed to show this part of myself, to be sensual, to dance sensual, to just talk in a sensual way, to look like. Photo shoots have always been so hard for me when the photographer's like, okay, give me sexy. Like, think about you're having a very amazing time with your man and you guys are getting hot, and but they try to talk you into like getting into that headspace to produce the picture, and it would just be like this. I'd just be like a deer in the headlights and smile. I'm like, no, it's giving JCPenney's catalog. It's not giving it's not giving Vogue. I've never felt like I was a sexy woman, and I'm very sexy. I'm very sensual, and when I am in a relationship and I have some safety, I guess, even though I've never felt fully safe, especially in my sexuality in relationships, I can be very sensual, and I love the intimacy and connection and pleasing and, working on still enjoying being pleased. But I love that part of me, and it always comes out when I'm in a relationship. And now that I've been single for the last 3 years, I've wanted to channel that energy for myself. Like, why do I have to be in a relationship or to be putting on for someone else in order for this side of me to come out? And I realized it's because I felt like my sexuality, my sensuality, who I am, and this part of me is only meant for a man, is only meant to be in a relationship because I'm, performing for someone else and turning on someone else. And I really woke up to this like a couple of years ago, and I was like, no, this is for me. And I am very sensual, and I want to be able to convey that all the time, or, whenever I want to, whenever I'm feeling in the mood. And so for a big part of me, the way that I started channeling that is by the way that I dressed. I definitely started wearing more skirts, started, taking care of my skin better, just started doing a lot of, I guess, stereotypical feminine things, even though I think all of us, men and women, doesn't matter how you identify, want to take care of your skin and your hair and stuff like that. That's not really a gender thing. But I guess like just keeping up on my skincare routine and the hair and just wearing more, I guess, feminine clothes, because for so long, I was a personal trainer, and I was just always in leggings and sports bras and, t-shirts and sneakers. And there's nothing wrong with that. That can be very sexy as well. But I just felt very masculine, and I was very much in my masculine energy my entire life. And so it hasn't been until these last 2 years that I've really gotten comfortable and reconnected with my feminine energy. And I love it. I love just exuding that sensuality and that sexiness when I'm walking around. It's so confident for me to feel this way. And I'm walking, and it's the knowing that I am a beautiful woman, and that I am sexual and I am sensual, and there's no shame around that. There's nothing wrong with that. And not everything needs to be a joke. Not everything needs to be laughing and, entertaining and just, not everything needs to be a joke. And so allowing myself to be more serious in situations where I would usually laugh, like when I would get approached by men in the past, I immediately would just be like, oh, what? Like, what are you? Yeah, just laughing, because it would just make me feel so uncomfortable, because I was so disempowered in myself. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to, really harness the sexuality and confidence within myself. So it would just immediately go to the defense mechanism, which is the laughing and the quirkiness. And I never was really perceived all the time the way I wanted to be perceived. And not that being funny and being super quirky is not sexy. I think sexy is subjective, and I think all parts of me can be sexy at some point. But this part of me, the way I would just be able to speak to people without laughing, and to be able to flirt and not feel like I just was going to combust, like flirting and all that. I didn't know how to do it. I really don't. And some of my friends just naturally just ooze the sex appeal. And I'd always look at them when we would go out, and just the way that they would connect. And I'd be like, gosh, how do you do this? Teach me how to do this. How do you just talk to them? And you're just so like in your essence and not worried about what they're thinking. And it's just, it was a whole vibe that I felt like I really wanted to start channeling within myself. And I realized a lot of it just came from the confidence and the knowing that my sexuality, my sensuality is nothing to be ashamed of. And it's the very essence of who we all are. We all came from this sexual energy, right? We are creation. And I have felt so just connected to a part of me that I had never really known before, my feminine energy, because I've had to be in defense mode my entire life, or I thought I had to be, because I didn't feel safe, and because I didn't feel safe particularly with men. And so it makes sense on why I would be so nervous and not as confident when it comes to them, speaking my truth, saying no, setting boundaries. All of that with men was 10 times more challenging than it was with women. And I totally understand why, and we've talked about it in previous episodes. But being able to lead and feel confident and comfortable in my sexuality now, and the way that I dress, and just feeling good in my body, all of these things has been such a game changer. And I know so many of you listening have went through this as well, if you're not still going through it. And it's definitely an energy, it's a mindset. It's not just the clothes that I wear, even though I wanted to dress more feminine and just wear something that feels more comfortable and authentic to me. But I still can feel this way with trousers on and a blazer. I can feel sexy completely covered up. I can feel sexy in a bathing suit. It's a state of mind, and once I realized that and was able to tap into that, it just really has changed the interactions that I've had with men and the way that men see me. And not that I'm doing it to be seen by them in a certain way, but I just have noticed the difference. And I'm still working on it. I still definitely have my shy moments. I definitely still have the moments where I'm just like giddy and like, I don't know. Especially if I'm very, very like attracted to the person. I can be shy still, and I'm working on that, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I just love that I can feel more empowered and have conversations and say no and just not be so in my head now, because I'm just reclaiming this part of myself and knowing like I'm the prize. I am, and so are you. If you're listening, you're the prize. And this is not just to women, this is men too. Like, you are the prize, and we don't have to wear these masks. We don't have to pretend to be someone that we're not. And usually that's what gets us in trouble when we get into relationships, where we try to pretend that we're one way and we're just this, and we're not being true to ourselves. And then when you get into the relationship, you realize that that's not really who you are at all. And so I feel like being sexy and the sexuality has less to do with the external, even though it plays factors, but more to do with how you truly feel about yourself, the confidence that you feel within yourself, and knowing that even if this conversation or this date doesn't go anywhere, I'm still it, I'm still worthy. I'm still a beautiful person, even if I'm not meant for that particular person. And to know that you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. I think a lot of my anxiousness when talking to men is feeling like I had to do something that I didn't want to do, and I had to show up a certain way. If sexy was kissing someone right away, that's not sexy. That's just not honoring your boundaries, which makes things even more awkward, to be honest. So yeah, I'm really glad that I felt empowered enough to kind of step into this and, not make so many jokes around everything, because there's a time and a place, right? And I want to kind of get a little bit deeper into the ways that we cope with our sexual trauma. For me, like I said, it was comedy and dissociation. I never really got into alcohol abuse. It's just not my thing. I don't like how it makes me feel. I don't like how it tastes. I feel like everybody's lying when they're just like, ooh, yeah, this is a smooth whiskey. I'm like, no, I don't care if it's $3,000 whiskey. It's still burning my throat. I just have never liked it. And I'm not necessarily upset about that. I don't feel like I missed out on the drinking, but definitely coping with it through cannabis for sure. Like I've talked in another episode as well, or just avoiding sex altogether. I feel like I haven't had as much experience, I guess, as I'm expected to be at my age, to be honest. And it's not a flex. And anyone who's had a ton of partners or a ton of experiences, I'm not judging. It doesn't matter. I could care less. I'm just saying, for me personally, I haven't really had that many sexual experiences, I guess, comparatively to women my age. And it's because I've always shied away from it. I've always coped with the pain of my sexual trauma by just not doing it at all. Just not doing it at all, because I felt so anxious. I felt so like I don't know what I'm doing. It would make me feel like a little girl. It would. I would dissociate back to that little girl who was taken advantage of and violated in childhood. And I would just feel so out of control and just feel like I'm just being of service to someone else. And while I feel like sex is servicing one another while also servicing yourself, I just felt like I was just servicing my partner or the person that I was engaging with. And so I became super asexual. And I know that there's a lot of people who have experienced sexual trauma that can become very hypersexual and very promiscuous and very much like feeling like they need to have the sex all the time. And I totally understand that response as well, because you feel like that is the connection. You feel like that is what you're supposed to do. It almost is like an outer body experience where you're just going through the motions because this is what you think that you have to do, and or a way that you feel like you can gain control of your sexuality, even though internally you feel so out of control of your sexuality because of what you haven't dealt with from your past, if you've had sexual trauma in the past. But for me personally, I was more asexual. And I think a lot of that comes from like picking up on how my mom was. My mom was not a very lovey-dovey, affectionate, emotional person. So I kind of followed suit with her. And, you know, she's had similar trauma as well. And so it's just so interesting how the generational patterns just keep continuing. And so because I didn't see her lovey-dovey, and because I didn't see her all hugged up on her men, and she didn't ever talk about sex or anything like that, I just became super void of it as well. And just, it would get me angry sometimes in relationships when it came time and I knew that my partner wanted to engage and I just wasn't feeling it, or I knew that it was going to feel like nothing, or I just felt so disempowered and frustrated with myself on why am I not getting turned on? Why is my libido so low? And I would take it out on my partners instead of being honest, and I would just shut them down or just be like, no, come on, you know, like we've done it enough this week. Just, you know, all these different coping mechanisms. And so anger was the way that I coped with my sexual trauma as well. And it was just because of my own insecurities in relationships and not feeling like I could deeply connect with my partner the way I really truly wanted to, and not having the awareness of what happened to me to explore it, and also not really having partners that were aware as well to explore it with me and ask questions. So yeah, the coping for me was the cannabis, humor, anger, and avoidance. That is the way that I coped. And so I'm really interested and curious on how some of the ways that you coped, if this resonates with you, and if this is something that you've gone through. Like, what are some of the ways that you have coped? And, you know, are you still using those ways to cope? Do you always have to be under the influence to enjoy sex? Or do you not feel like you're really that sexual of a person, and have you just surrendered to that even though it may not be true? You know, what parts of your personality have been shaped by your sexual trauma? Those are some questions to start asking yourself, to think deeper in when it comes to why you do what you do and why you act the way that you act. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about today. I was really, you know, just kind of intuitive with what I wanted to talk about. I haven't made an episode in a couple weeks, and this kind of popped up. And yeah, I think that it's a really great topic and something that you can explore deeper within yourself if this resonates. And just know that your sensuality and your sexuality is not shameful. There's nothing to be ashamed of. And it's a part of who you are. It's the very essence of who you are, and not that you have to lead with it, and you don't have to be, you know, super vulgar and out in the streets doing it. But if you are, there's nothing wrong with that either. But I'm just saying that, like, everybody has their own way of being sexy. Everyone has their own idea of what that is. And whether you're super vocal and outward with it, or you're more, you know, in the house with it, it's there. It's there. And you know it, you know that. So I hope that this helped. I hope that as this series, as we continue together, that you're feeling more and more empowered and less alone, because that was the whole point of me doing this series in the first place. So I would love your feedback. Make sure you're following me on socials. Instagram and TikTok is _ stay hype. And I'll see you next time. I love you guys. Bye.